this is a two-step review process. The P&Z will review this application and make a recommendation to the BOCC. In 2019, the subdivision approval created 2 lots, and it also acknowledged a 3rd lot that was divided by Castle Creek Road. Historic designation review was also considered for the Highland Bavarian Lodge and related historic structures. Benefits related to historic designation, such as the ability to construct a 2nd dwelling unit on the property on the ranch lot, were approved as part of the subdivision. Conservation easements were also approved. Documents to perfect the subdivision, such as final plat, the conservation easements, the historic covenant, trail easements were to be recorded. The previous owners, the Coffey family, were intent on securing entitlements in anticipation of selling their property. And they began working with staff to review and get those various documents all ready for recordation. However, the property sold without the documents being recorded. The new owners of the property elected to take their time to evaluate their land and their land use approvals and create their own vision for their property. Their proposal is reflected in the application, and staff has determined that the changes in the application are major amendments to detailed submission and final plat. In addition, the previous approval approved an activity envelope for the ranch parcel, always anticipating that site plan review would be required when a specific development plan for the ranch parcel was proposed. So you're also seeing site plan review for the ranch parcel in this application. So with that bit of background, staff is recommending that we start the review process today and consider the presentation by Glenn. We will take any questions, and then we are recommending to continue the meeting to February 15th. If you remember last week, I sent an email to all of you telling you that story poles were up on the property that outlined the footprint and gave you the height of the barn and the greenhouse that are proposed to be relocated. The barn is proposing to be relocated. The greenhouse is a new structure. And last week, the Open Space and Trails Board did a site visit and looked at those story poles. And they have concerns related to the location of the barn and the greenhouse, as I pointed out in your memo to you, and their referral comments were attached to the memo. So because of the Open Space and Trails Board's comments, and because this is a pretty in-depth presentation, we're recommending that you continue the meeting to February 15th, and that we schedule a site visit for the P&Z prior to the February 15th meeting. I think it will be really helpful for you to view the story poles in context of the property and in context of this application. So as I said, when Glenn is done, I'll walk you through the memo on the various sections of the memo that relate to the land use code, and I'm available for any questions.
Glenn, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. As Leslie said, my name is Glenn Horn. I represent Namu Ranch LLC, the owner of Highland Ranch. Namu Ranch LLC is an entity owned by Meredith Loring and her husband, Sami Inkinen. Meredith and Sami bought the ranch from the Coffey family in the summer of 2020. They are full-time local residents who have 2 little girls. They've been renting a place in town while the lodge is being remodeled. The Coffey family owned the Highland Ranch from 1962 until 2020, when they sold it to Meredith and Sami. I want to introduce members of our planning team that are participating in this Zoom meeting and will be available for any questions in their areas of expertise. Sarah Adams, land use planner and historic preservation planner with Bendon Adams, is on the call as part of the Zoom meeting. Sarah Oates is the land use attorney for the applicant. Dylan Johns of Zone 4 Architects is the architect. And Jen DeCillo of DHM is the landscape architect who's joining with Stephen Ellsperman of DHM. So all of these people are here participating in the event that something comes up in their area of expertise. We want to begin by addressing the history of the Highland Bavarian Lodge, the existing conditions on the ranch. We're going to describe the 2019 land use approvals and explain the changes that are made, that are being requested. So with that as an introduction, I want to introduce Sarah Adams, who is going to give you a little background, not much, on the background of the ranch and the Highland Bavarian Lodge, and introduce a documentary video that the applicant has hired a professional documentarian to prepare. And they're going to play this video for you.
Hi, everybody. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. I'm Sarah Adams with Bendon Adams. Thanks, Glenn. We are pretty excited to show you this documentary video of the Highland Ranch and to explain the history. Back in 2019, I created a historic report of the ranch. And there is an idea with this new project to really reach a wider audience. And so the report has been converted into a documentary video. It's about 15 minutes long. It's been gifted to the Aspen Historical Society. So it's something that will be in their archives that they can use to not only show our younger generation, but to anyone who comes by the new museum that's hopefully at the base of Lift 1. So without talking any more about the history, I think the video is going to speak for itself, and Bonnie is going to try to play it for you. We've practiced this, so I think it's going to work. Thanks, Bonnie.
This is a story about a complex tapestry of lives, and at the heart is a little ski lodge and a big vision for an old mining town. Our story begins in Europe, where a few Americans fall in love with the new sport of skiing.
I've been skiing all over Canada and all over the eastern USA, and I've been skiing all over Europe for 2 years.
Well, the most important thing about Dad is that he was passionate about skiing. He thought it was the most thrilling, invigorating activity that anybody had ever dreamed up. And he wanted to export it from there and import it to the States.
At the 1936 Winter Olympics, Ted Ryan meets Billy Fisk. They begin to discuss a vision for winter sports in the United States, inspired by Bavarian ski culture.
Billy Fisk had quite a reputation. He won a gold medal in the 1928 Olympics for bobsledding. He won another gold medal in the 1932 Olympics and got to carry the American flag at the opening. That was the Lake Placid Olympics, the first Olympics in America. T.J. Flynn, known as Tom Flynn, was an Aspen native. He lived in Aspen as a child because his father owned one of the mines up in the Little Annie Basin called the Toplift Mine.
Why do we have to take a boat ride that takes 6 to 10 days to get to Calais and then on into Austria and so forth? Why can't we find something back in the USA? And there's sort of an agreement, anybody finds one, let's go, let's do something about it.
In the spring of 1936, there was a party in Pasadena, and Tom Flynn from Aspen and Billy Fisk, who was working in Los Angeles at the time, were both there. And they were talking to each other, and Billy Fisk said, there's no place for a ski area in North America. The mountains, there's nothing like Europe. And Flynn, because he had grown up in Aspen and had been up in the Little Annie Basin, said, well, no, wait a minute. You know, the Elk Mountains in Colorado are a lot like Europe. Flynn convinced Fisk that he should have a look.
The summer after that fateful party in Pasadena, the friends meet up to scout the Elk Mountains.
Meanwhile, Tom Flynn had met with Mayor Willoughby, so he asked Willoughby to take them up to the Little Annie Basin and show them around. Billy Fisk recognized that this looked just like the slopes in Europe. It was like the sound of music. It was like, wow. He just fell in love with it immediately. They did a little ceremony at the top. They named some peaks along the ridge, and they buried a little placard underneath one of the rocks saying, well, this is going to be one of the world's greatest ski areas. And within days after that visit, they tasked Tom Flynn and said, good, buy the land at the bottom. So he bought the Highland Ranch and the neighboring property that would get you up into the Little Annie Basin.
Billy got me on the phone and said, Ted, I think we found it. Will you come along? And I said, sure. And we had a little group, which was incorporated as the Highland Bavarian Corporation. That was the first ski corporation in Pitkin County.
I mean, as part of all that, they actually then built the Highland Bavarian Lodge.
Flynn moved to Aspen and got to work. Because he knew Aspen, he was tasked with the job of making everything happen in Aspen.
We built our lodge fast. We wanted to get it going.
Architect Gordon Kaufman from Pasadena, California, designed the rustic-style lodge using stick-built construction with a manufactured log veneer. Jimmy Brodero, an artist working for Disney Studios, created a decorative motif in the gable ends, and his wife selected the interior decor to complete the European-inspired chalet-style lodge. It included a large hearth in the center and 2 bunk rooms for their many guests.
This was going to be a lodge-headquarters. The location of the lodge was picked because it was directly at the bottom of the Little Annie Basin.
Flynn and Ryan cut a ski run at the bottom of Little Annie Basin in the summer of 1936 that connected back to the property. This short run became the first ski run cut in Pitkin County.
It was ready to go for the winter season.
The Highland Bavarian Lodge was the first step towards this vision of an entire ski village and was to serve as the first phase of development that would support skiing on Richmond Hill.
We're in the process of developing an entire ski area, not where Aspen is located now, but actually up where there is now the ghost town of Ashcroft.
We laid plans and had architects going on the larger hotel, the middle hotel, the little hotel, the post office, the sports shops. And there we laid out bob runs because Bill was a great bobsled runner. And we had skating rinks and skating waiters envisioned. And we had the whole works of a good European thing set in that valley.
The investors, especially Ryan and Fisk, thought, well, you know, we've gone this far. Maybe we should have an expert tell us if we've picked the right spot. So that's when they brought in Andre Roche and Dr. Gunther Langes. Dr. Gunther Langes was an avalanche and snow expert from Italy. Andre Roche had a lifetime of mountain climbing, and he was passionate about skiing, and he was able to make everyone around him love the sport, and he was a good ski instructor.
We had Roche here for that full year, you know, 36 and 37, and he scouted all the mountains around here.
My father showed them around the valley, took them to different places, and he brought his brother Frank, who was a better skier and more interested in skiing, looking for different snow conditions. They even climbed Castle Peak. That was the first winter ascent of Castle Peak. The conclusion that Roche came up with was that Little Annie Basin was a wonderful place to have a ski area, but the snow was not that good.
If you'll move up the valley 6 miles and acquire the valley of Ashcroft, which is this that we see out here. And the Cooper Basin and the Star Mountain and an Italian mountain area, you'll have something that will be better than anything we've got in Switzerland.
And there you really would have skiing like Europe. Long 3, 4, 5 mile runs.
And our intent was to attract people who might invest in making Aspen a ski area to come and see what it was all about.
Over the next few years, the partners begin a national marketing campaign to bring people to the lodge and see the perfect area they had chosen. They start the Roaring Fork Winter Sports Club to teach people to ski and gain community support.
Originally, the idea was to form a club that would have skating and bobsledding in Aspen. And Frank Willoughby was chosen as the president.
It's himself and Frances, his sister, and his brother. They all basically kind of were the first members of the Winter Sports Club, the AVSC precursor.
They invite experts like Otto Schneebs, the father of American skiing.
His role was primarily as the coach, the ski coach at Dartmouth College. He wrote several books about skiing.
They hold a winter carnival and host the very first races in February of 1937.
The first race was held above the Highland Bavarian Lodge in the field above it. The partners cut a pathway through the trees into the Little Annie Basin. And then from that, the ski club would go on to host many races.
The news begins to spread. Billy Fisk has Hollywood connections, so they invite celebrities like Jack Oakey.
He actually came back a number of times. He said he really liked Aspen because he wasn't hounded by autograph seekers.
And on the East Coast, Robert Benchley writes a how-to Aspen to help spread the word of this now American pastime. Everything was moving along smoothly. Now they needed to build the 2 tramways.
Both Fisk and Ryan had pretty deep pockets, but not the kind of money that was estimated it would cost to build the first 2 lifts.
They recruited Lowell Thomas.
Good evening, everybody. The White House announces that there will be no new statement until tomorrow. This means, of course, that discussions by radio telephone are being held.
He had one of the most popular daily radio shows in the country.
Lowell Thomas lobbied the Colorado legislature on behalf of the Highland Bavarian Corporation to get a loan to build the lifts.
And this was unusual because skiing was a totally new industry and very few people could think of a way to make money from it.
And the loan was granted.
We didn't really have our hearts in it because we could see that America was going to get into this war before too long.
A perfect storm of events leads to the end of the Highland Bavarian Corporation and the end of a grand vision for Ashcroft.
And then Pearl Harbor happened.
And of course, all of us individually went off to our wars, wherever we could get into it.
Immediately, Billy Fisk volunteered for the Royal Air Force, and he was one of the very first pilots from America to actually be killed in the war. He was shot down. Fisk was the motivator within the partners. He was the flamboyant person. He was the energy person who drove much of what was happening.
It looked as if that was the end of things for him. He'd lost his great friend and muse, the glamorous athlete Billy Fisk. So I'm not at all surprised that he closed down. My father wrecked himself on a tree up in the Laurentians, and he took the last run of the day one day, blew his knee apart, and he was in traction for 1 full year after that.
The skiing accident left Ted Ryan ineligible to fight overseas. But his broken knee did not slow down his patriotism.
So Ryan went to the military.
I offered them Ashcroft properties for $1 for the duration of the war to train ski troops on.
The Army took Ryan up on his offer.
Because if I could get them to come out and have a taste of Aspen, I think they'll come back after the war and like it.
Well, first of all, the 10th Mountain Division, 87th Regiment actually would come over here quite a bit for their training ops. They would also come here on their weekends to visit because they were encouraged to come here.
They were welcomed in Aspen. The Hotel Jerome put them up. The Midnight Mining Company helped them by hauling them up the mountain so that they could ski down.
No, I came here many times on weekends strictly just to ski. And also there were no MPs in town, and so you could relax, you know. If you got drunk and fell down, well, who cared, you know, it made no difference.
It was what Ted Ryan here had developed prior to the war. Was one of the strongest reasons we came here and why Friedel came here.
One in particular, Friedel Pfeiffer, he actually kept coming back on his weekends. And then right after he was released from the army, he came back in fall of 1945. And actually, he's the one who worked with Percy Rideout and Johnny Litchfield, also 10th Mountain Division soldiers, to develop the first ski school here in Aspen. And then they all worked together with D.R.C. Brown and Walter Pepka to develop the Aspen Skiing Corporation that was then incorporated in 1946.
The boys were ahead of me here on this mountain, and I better lay back on Mount Hayden, so I couldn't lick them, so I joined them.
And by the time we have 4 or 5 million skiers in the country, it was better to be a little remote and not get overrun by weekend skiers and sort of scare away the regular tourist, which we really were building for.
You could say that my father was a major influencer in the cultural shift.
Amongst the rapid growth of Aspen and Pitkin County, the Highland Bavarian Lodge is still standing, holding space for what is now a thriving ski and outdoor recreation culture. The Highland Bavarian partners saw the potential of the Elk Mountains, brought in the experts to determine where the best skiing was, promoted the culture of skiing across the country, and set the stage for what is now one of the most famous ski areas on the planet. All thanks to this little cabin in the valley.
All right, thanks, Bonnie. I'm just going to say a few quick things and throw it to Glenn. Thanks, everybody, for watching that video. I think the video really speaks for itself. I mean, this is clearly one of the most important properties in Pitkin County. This is where skiing all started. And I think we would all agree that preservation of the buildings on this property is imperative to our history. Meredith and Sammy have already taken steps to preserve the important historic buildings on the property, which I'm sure Glenn will be going into in his report. But we think that the video and the donation of the video to the Historical Society is a great way to preserve the history and to just kind of explain the history in a different way than just a regular report. So with that, I'll turn it over to Glenn. Thanks again for your time. Glenn, I think you're muted.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And thank you for working with Hamilton Pevick for preparing that video. And thanks to Meredith for funding the preparation of that video, which is going to be donated to Pitkin County and the Aspen Historic Society. So now I want to do the rest of the presentation and address the existing conditions on the ranch, give a little background, let Meredith explain her land use objectives for the property, and then discuss the differences in the request today as compared to the 2019 approvals. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, good, that worked. So is that hand? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so this is an aerial photo that shows the property. Here's an outline of the entire holdings that goes around. This is Castle Creek Road that goes through the property in a north-south direction. This is what we call the Castle Creek parcel on the east side of Castle Creek Road. The ranch parcel, which is separate from the Castle Creek parcel. The Castle Creek parcel is 23 acres in size. It's separately developable because it's divided by the Castle Creek Road right-of-way, which was sold to Pickens County in 1936. The ranch parcel on the west side of Castle Creek Road is bound by Castle Creek to the west. And then here is the Mesa parcel. The Mesa parcel gets its name because it's about at the same elevation as the ranch parcel. There's a big gulch down here where the creek goes through. And the Mesa parcel surrounds this little park. You can see in the trees. It's heavily sheltered from Castle Creek Road by aspen and evergreen trees. This is the base of Hayden here to the west and to the south. This is the Conundrum Creek Road that borders the property to the northwest. And here, a 2.6 acre portion of the property goes across Conundrum Creek Road and borders Conundrum Creek. So the ranch parcel is 35 acres in size. The Mesa parcel's 21. Castle Creek parcel's 23 acres. The Conundrum Creek parcel's 2.6. All of the land is zoned AR10, 1 unit per 10 acres. And the property is zoned for a maximum of 8 dwelling units if it went through and got its entitlements. So that gives you a little overview of the parcel. The Castle Creek Valley is recognized as one of the most scenic alpine valleys in Pickens County, the state of Colorado, and the United States as a whole. There's limited development in the valley, and it's the destination for thousands of sightseers who come to hike in the Maroon Bell Snowmass Wilderness area on trails, bicycle riders who are destined for Ashcroft or Little Annie Road on Castle Creek Road, motorists who are sightseeing in the valley. There are a lot of people that drive up this valley because cars are not permitted, as you know, in the summer in the Maroon Creek Valley. The Castle Creek Valley opens up to people traveling on the road when you get to the Conundrum Creek intersection. If you take a look at this photo here, that's the Conundrum Creek Road on the right here. And this is land that's not owned as part of the ranch. If you look right here is the gate to the ranch, and that's where the meadows for the ranch parcel begin. On the other side of the road, actually, here's another shot looking up valley, and it's just past the gate, and you can see this beautiful irrigated pasture on the west side of the road that's part of the ranch parcel. On the other side of the road, here is another photo of the ranch parcel. This is the proposed location of the barn, and it's significant. You can see the proposed story poles. And what's significant here is that there's a 24-foot elevation change between the road and the base of where the barn will be. It gives you a better sense like this. Our point of showing you these story poles and the reason for the site visit is to get a sense of how a barn might look in this location. And it really doesn't impede these first impression views you get. This view that you get when you're traveling up valley, this is the first view you get at Conundrum Creek Road. And then here, this is a view looking up valley on the ranch parcel. And then across the way, this is a view heading down valley on Castle Creek Road. You can see the lodge to the left right here, and through the trees, this is the up valley end of the open meadow. Here's a view that you get on the left-hand side of the road as you're traveling up valley. This is the Castle Creek parcel. This is on the east side of Castle Creek Road. This is the first view you get when you're going up valley of that open meadow, which is below the Philadelphia mill site. There's a house on the left side of this photograph. And then this land here is all owned by the Highland Ranch by Sami and Meredith. This is a view of the same meadow as you're traveling down valley on Castle Creek Road. Once again, you can see the beauty of the valley and how it opens up at this point just up valley from the Conundrum Creek Road. So with that, I want to say that we've developed a land use plan that meets the needs of Meredith and Sami's family. It's consistent with the 2003 Maroon Castle Master Plan, which is the adopted master plan for the valley, which is in the process of being updated now. It recognizes the values of Castle Creek and Pitkin County residents. With that as kind of a background, I want to introduce Meredith Loring so she can explain her family's goals for the property and what she envisions for the ranch.
Thanks, Glenn. I'm Meredith, and I appreciate you guys all taking the time to do this. I know some of you spent a significant amount of time doing this in 2019 for the coffees. So I appreciate that it might be annoying going through this again, but I want to explain what our goals are and give you more context about why we're going through this process again. So we moved here in 2020 and we wanted to move here for a while, but our office was in San Francisco and COVID kind of gave us the opportunity to move to Aspen. And it's been really wonderful for us with our two kids. And this was kind of a dream property for us. And it's really in line with our long-term goals. Our main goal with the property is really to enjoy a rural and agricultural property with our family and to live in the lodge for the foreseeable future and potentially develop a new house on the ranch lot in some future time. The lodge is pretty small. It has one bedroom the way that we're renovating it. So we want to move one of the bunkhouses over, which is also historic, so that we have more room for our family of 4. And we plan to move into the lodge in April. Like Glenn said, we're renting in town. We also have a bunch of animals up there. So right now I have 3 horses up there and we plan to add more animals, more horses, maybe chickens and goats. We also want to create gardens. And that's the main reason why we wanted to move the barn down valley away from the house and the cluster of buildings that we're living in. It's one thing to have the barns up there when you're using them for storage of cars like the Coffey family was. But when you have a large number of animals and caretakers and tractors going around, it's really disruptive to have it next to our kids playing outside and just kind of smells of animals and so on. And so that's the context of moving the barn down. Another goal that we have for the property is really that we can live in a private environment. That's one of the main reasons we chose this property. And so just to give you context on the other major change on the application, we wanted to remove the trail that goes on the Castle Creek lot that was called the Highland Overlook Trail, that was aimed at giving the public accessibility to the historic building. So you could kind of see right over the lodge where we're moving. And it just didn't feel like a private environment to have people up there looking directly down on the building and our 2 little girls and our family kind of using the property. And I think the other 2 goals of ours are just about maintaining the rural and wild nature of the property. So our goal isn't to subdivide this into 8 different parcels. We're trying to develop this as little as possible because we really value the open space and the wilderness that's up there. We are pursuing the subdivision of the Mesa parcel, but it's primarily for future use. We don't have any immediate plans to build or develop that lot. I think in the future, maybe we use it for our kids, or if we get into a financial jam, we'll have to sell it. But at this time, we just want to hold on to it. And we're trying to preserve as much of the property as possible, both for the views and just for our own use. And so that's why we're putting more of the property into conservation easements than in the previous application, both on the Castle Creek side and on the ranch lot. So hopefully that context is helpful and lets you know a little bit about why we're back in front of you.
Okay, thanks, Meredith. I'll just move along here with the presentation, getting into a discussion of the Castle Creek parcel and how it was dealt with back in 2019. So keep in mind, as I said, the Castle Creek parcel is a separate parcel from the rest of the ranch. It's legally separated by the Castle Creek Road right of way, which was sold in 1936 to the Pitkin County. So this property is entitled now to be developed with a 5750 square foot house exempt from growth management. In order to develop it, someone would just have to go through activity envelope and site plan review. And we've shown you the photos of it. It's interesting to look at this ortho photo because you can see the area that's labeled as A right here and B on the bottom of the screen. These are the two areas on the property that could be developed with a single family house. The site is encumbered by steep slopes, rockfall, and avalanche hazard. The color coding here is red are slopes that are over 45%. This orange area are slopes that are between 30 and 45%. Right here where this hand is where the ski runs are that you saw in the video. They're right above the Highland Bavarian Lodge. These were the beginner runs. There was a sleigh track that took people up to the top of these runs, and people could do laps here skiing above the lodge, but the majority of the skiing was just a little bit up Castle Creek Road on the old Little Annie Road that went to what they called the Highland Basin and Little Annie. So this A here is quite significant because it shows an area that's located outside of the blue avalanche zone, which is shown by this line, and outside the limits of the red avalanche zone. Red is severe avalanche hazard. Blue area is moderate avalanche hazard. This site is hazard-free. And it's not steep. It's also quite significant. Here's the view looking down valley at the site and the view looking up valley at the site. But the significance of this sketch is this is more than likely where a house would be should a property owner choose to seek development approvals on the property, and it's entitled for development of 5750. The property could also be subdivided into two separate development areas. Area B could be developed, although there's very bad site distance from Area B onto Castle Creek Road because it's at the bottom of these curves. So anyway, Meredith discussed this trail easement. During the course of the last review, after the proposal was considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission, the idea came up from the Board of County Commissioners to develop a trail that would go from approximately here to the top of the ski runs because there's a great view down towards the lodge. The thought would be that this would create public access so that people could view the lodge. Unfortunately, and I completely understand this, Meredith and Sami feel that a trail leading to this overlook would intrude upon their privacy. So for that reason, the trail has been eliminated from the proposal. And I want to remind you that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the Highland Bavarian subdivision plan when this trail was not part of the proposal. It got added by the Board of County Commissioners following the Planning and Zoning Commission review. In lieu of the trail, the applicant has prepared the documentary video, which will be gifted to the county and the Historic Society. And we're also proposing that a plaque be erected on the road, which I'll show you a picture of. Yeah, this is the plaque, which was designed by Sarah Adams. And this would be on the road. It would address the history of the property. People could stop on their bikes or in their car and take a look at the plaque. We're proposing that it be located near the driveway for the entry to the barn activity envelope. And we're looking at trying to place a QR code on the plaque so that people going by could scan the QR code like you would a menu in a restaurant and download a shortened version of the documentary video and take it home and watch it. So anyway, that's a little bit of an overview of the Castle Creek parcel. And what I want to remind you of is that in the prior review, the applicant proposed and the county approved sterilizing the Castle Creek parcel, the 23-acre Castle Creek parcel, and moving the 5,750 square foot development entitlement across the way to the Mesa parcel, which joins the Castle Creek parcel across the Castle Creek Road right-of-way. So the entitlement from the Castle Creek parcel would move to the Mesa lot, the 5750 base entitlement. That's still part of the application. In addition, you've got the ranch parcel here at 35, as I mentioned, and the Conundrum Creek parcel, which is 2.6 acres in size. It's our belief that the Conundrum Creek parcel is separately developable. However, in the course of the land use review, the Coffey family decided not to pursue any action to divide that property or relief in the courts from the county attorney and Pickett County opinion that the Conundrum Creek parcel had merged with the Mesa lot. So we view the Conundrum Creek parcel and the Mesa lot as one. The 2.6 acre Conundrum parcel is joined with the 23 acre Mesa lot. So I want to show you, here's the activity envelope and site plan for the Mesa, which was approved in the prior application, has not changed. This is the Conundrum Creek Road on the left here, which is to the northwest of the Mesa lot. And this is the Conundrum parcel. Here's an existing ranch road that goes, climbs up from Conundrum Creek Road to the house that's approved on the Mesa lot. This site plan has not changed. The house was approved for 10,750 square feet, 5,750 coming from the base development allotment that was transferred from the Castle Creek parcel. And the Board of County Commissioners awarded an additional 5,000 square feet for the development on the Mesa as a reward for historically designating the Highland Bavarian Lodge. In addition, the Board of County Commissioners approved the development of a detached caretaker dwelling unit and accessory structure in this envelope here. That would be an additional 2,500 square feet. The only change to the Mesa lot activity envelope plan is that the potential floor area on the Mesa parcel will be reduced by 784 square feet. So the free market house will be 784 square feet smaller, and that 784 square feet will be developed on the ranch lot, as I'm about to explain. So in 2019, there was no site plan approved for the ranch parcel. This is the ranch parcel. Here's Castle Creek Road. This is the driveway that goes into the ranch parcel. You're looking at the southern end of the parcel. This exhibit does not show the north end. Here's the lodge. This is the existing metal barn here. This is the wood barn. This is the bunkhouse. This is the ranch manager's house. So in 2019, the Board of County Commissioners approved this activity envelope that encompassed the existing development. And there was no proposal by the Coffey family for a site plan, they thought that a future owner would come back and propose a site plan. At the time, we thought that a house would be built somewhere in this area and that the metal barn here and the wood barn would be removed and a house would be built in this area. And that's pretty much what Meredith and Sami are proposing, is that they're going to live in this Highland Bavarian Lodge. They're going to eliminate the ranch manager's house, which was approved to become a CDU, and build their house somewhere in this area right here, which is going to be pretty close to the metal and wood barn. So we're proposing that that will be relocated. There will be an additional 784 square feet of development on the ranch lot as compared to what was approved. Here's an overview of the proposed activity and envelope and site plan for the ranch parcel. All of this diagonal area is going to be in a conservation easement on the down valley end of the property, and on the up valley end of the property, this is the northerly activity envelope for the barn. This is the southerly activity envelope for the historic structures and the new house. This next slide blows this up, and you can see here is the historic Bavarian Lodge. We're proposing that there would be a link between the historic Bavarian Lodge and the relocated bunkhouse with a corridor, a heated corridor behind a garage. And this is where the family is proposing to live for the foreseeable future, with the idea that someday they could possibly build a new house and move to that new house, and this would become a guest house. The ranch manager's house, which is right here, which is not historic, would be demolished. The historic cabin on the left side of the photo here would become an accessory structure with bathing facilities and will remain. This cabin's historic, Highland Bavarian Lodge is historic, and those are the historic resources. Right here, you can see this is about where the existing barn is. And let me just slide this up here. You can see it's actually right, it's not in this, but there's an artist studio right about in this area here that doesn't appear on this plan. The next slide shows the plan for the down valley end of the site. This is an existing ranch road that would be utilized to access the property. We've looked at this with the county engineer. There's adequate site distances, and there was no objection from the county engineer to access Castle Creek Road here. So this would be a second access onto the county road. This would be the metal barn that would be restored, and this would be the wood barn. This is a greenhouse that's being proposed. To give you an idea of what this will look like, here's a shot, an image of the metal barn dressed up and the wood barn dressed up that would be located in that envelope. And I'll go back to that slide. So here, this would be the dressed up metal barn. This would be the wood barn, a barnyard area, and the greenhouse. The total difference in terms of what would be developed on the ranch parcel would be an addition of 784 square feet as opposed to what was previously approved. The new house would be 5,750 square feet in size. There'd be a 4,000 square foot subgrade space and a 750 square foot garage. So with that, I want to discuss relationships between barns and residences, because we were a little taken aback by the recommendation of the Open Space and Trails Board, and that they recommended that They've recommended that the new barn be located, or the barn be relocated in this area right in here. This would be a loafing shed, but they're proposing that the barn be in this area right here, clustered near the new house and the Highland Bavarian Lodge. And we took a look at relationships around the county between barns and houses. In the scenic view protection guidelines, there are different patterns for how you can plan a property. And one of the patterns is to place activity envelopes on the edge of rural pastures, which is what we're proposing, to have 2 envelopes. And that's a common pattern around the county. Here's an image of the Braun subdivision. Here's Gail and Bill Braun's house that they built several years ago in Woody Creek. Here's their equestrian facility. This is the old Wagner barn in Woody Creek. And the distance between these 2 structures is 949 square feet. Take a look at Charlie Mountain Ranch in Snowmass Creek. The distance between the barn and the house is 502 square feet. You take a look at Chaparral Aspen. Here's the barn in the pasture that you can see from Highway 82. And you're looking at approximately 2,000 square feet from the barn to the closest house. If you take a look at
linear feet, Glenn.
Excuse me?
Hopefully
Yeah,
it's
lineal
linear
feet. That's
feet.
correct. Yeah, lineal feet. Looking at the Craig Ranch Parcel 8, it's 960 lineal feet between the proposed house on that parcel and the equestrian facility and barn. Looking at the Flying Dog Ranch North Parcel, it's 2,600 lineal feet from the Stranahan's old house to the barn on Woody Creek Road. If you look at Two Shoes Ranch and Prince Creek, the main house is 1,200 feet from the barn. Lost Marbles Ranch, the McBride house, is 1,500 feet from the barn. And I think what these slides show, it's common on rural parcels in Pickens County to have quite a bit of separation between houses and barns. And what we're proposing on the Highland Ranch is an 1,100 lineal foot separation between the house and the barn site. If you take a look at some of these photos we've taken of how barns become part of the rural landscape, this is a photo of Cypress Mountain Ranch. You're looking at the red barn on East Cypress Creek Road, agricultural outbuildings. The barns and the agricultural buildings become part of the rural landscape. You know, in a lot of the reviews we've done over the years, the feeling is that the barn's a little different than a house, and seeing a barn on a rural property is kind of part of the rural landscape. Take a look at another photo, St. Benedict's Monastery, the barn on Capitol Creek Road, kind of typical of rural barns in Pickens County. Here's a picture of the Braun barn. This is the old Wagner barn in Woody Creek. We looked at a graphic about this. You can see the mountains in the background. This photo is taken going down valley on Woody Creek Road. Here's a shot of the Goodman's barn in Snowmass Creek. You can just make out Garrett Peak to the left behind the tree. This is a copy of the existing conditions Down Valley Comprehensive Plan. We chose at the time in the mid 1980s, and I'm sure Suzanne will remember this, to put this picture of Bubby Light's farmhouse, barn, and agricultural outbuildings on the cover of the Down Valley Comprehensive Plan, because it was kind of consistent with the rural character that we were trying to plan for in Pickens County at the time. We went back and looked at this over the weekend, and it remains pretty much the same as you're looking at here as it did in 1985. So with that as a background, I just want to emphasize the commitments of the Loring-Inkinen family regarding Highland Ranch. They're going to designate the Highland Bavarian Lodge cabin, bunkhouse, and ski slope to the historic register. They're going to preserve and enhance the visual qualities of the land. They're going to preserve the Castle Creek parcel as open space encumber the Castle Creek parcel with a conservation easement, encumber the ranch parcel meadow with a conservation easement that'll be far larger than the easement that was committed to by the Coffey family. They're going to restrict development on the property to 3 free market houses. They're going to prohibit additional development on the ranch. They intend to demolish the free market ranch manager's dwelling unit and replace it with a CDU. They intend to convert the historic cabin, which is a free market single-family dwelling unit, to an accessory structure with bathing facilities. They're going to designate, they're going to design a historic interpretive sign, which I showed you, and erect it in the Castle Creek right-of-way. They're going to gift the Highland Bavarian Lodge documentary video to Picken County and the Aspen Historic Society. And they agree to dedicate a 10-foot wide trail easement on the south side of Conundrum Creek Road to link with the trail easement that is already in existence on Conundrum Creek Road. So that kind of summarizes the proposal. The key differences are the elimination of the trail on the Castle Creek parcel, the addition of 784 square feet of floor area on the ranch parcel, and the establishment of an activity envelope and site plan for the barn, which was not part of the original proposal. So with that, I would just ask any of our team members or Meredith if there's anything that I might have missed, which they may want to comment on.
Well, and there are 2 things that I would like to add if nobody else has anything.
Sure.
Okay. First is a bit of an aside, but prior to becoming an attorney, I had worked at the Aspen Historical Society for a number of years as a curator, and really thought I'd seen all the images there were out there of Aspen, early ski footage, etc. And I've got to say that film was just phenomenal. They've dug up some stuff that I've never seen before. I think Picken County and the Historical Society are really lucky to have this as a gift, and anybody in the world can view it. So it's just, I think that film was great. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Glenn, Sarah Adams, and I were the original team who worked with the Coffey family to get the original approvals. And as part of those approvals, I had to provide draft agreements, including conservation easements for both the Castle Creek parcel and the ranch parcel. The draft agreements were carried through from 2019. They were probably, I'm sure, provided when we presented to P&Z, and were carried through all the way to the detailed approvals for when the Coffey family got approval. They also were reviewed and approved by county staff and were ready for signature. Included in both conservation easements, but more particularly in the ranch parcel easement, was that accessory structures such as agricultural buildings, sheds, barns, greenhouses, and garages were permitted in conservation easement areas. There was never an objection by Open Space and Trails or any concern brought up by any of the county staff at the time about permitting agricultural accessory structures in the conservation easement. So I wanted to go ahead and mention that while we're discussing this concern that Open Space has with the location of the barn. Thanks.
So I think if unless Dylan, Jen, or Stephen have any other comments, we can take questions or turn this back over to Leslie. However, Jeff, you want to handle the meeting.
Any other speakers from your team? I saw Meredith's daughter. If she wants to present, she's welcome to.
Sorry, it's getting to be done.
No, she's trying to figure out when dinner is, so am I. It's all right. Any other presenters from Glenn's team or Meredith's team? And thank you both for the video as well as your time this evening. And I realize this is part 1 of 2. So I guess I'll turn it back. There's nothing else from Glenn and Meredith's team and Sarah. Commissioner comments or questions for Glenn et al. Or Leslie? Or Leslie, if you had any other additions as well.
Well, I was going to kind of walk the P&Z just through the various sections of the memo of what you are reviewing. I think Glenn did a really good job of that, but all these proposed changes to the previous approval prior to recordation of the final plat has caused us to put this into a major amendment process.
Right.
Then you're looking at in section D, B, C, and D of my memo. That's where I talk about the historic designation and the benefits and grant of optional incentives that go with historic designation. So those changes in that section of the memo are the removal of the trail, the increase in the allowable floor area on the ranch parcel with that transfer of square footage from the mesa to the ranch. And then section F, and also in the historic designation and optional incentives, that's where we talk again about the transfer of additional square footage to the mesa parcel, also as an incentive for historically designated structures. Section F of my memo is the activity envelope. And we're getting into activity envelope again because the activity envelope is proposed to be amended on the ranch parcel. And then the site plan review, as I said earlier, is new because now we have a site-specific development plan for the P&Z to consider. This also is conditional special review use for a caretaker dwelling unit, but that was approved previously. We're just noting that the caretaker dwelling unit is now being moved into the barn and not becoming the ranch manager. Ranch manager's unit is not becoming the caretaker dwelling. So, and then I think it's important to point out that the BOCC, when they approved this application originally, they granted a 10-year vested right. And the applicant is requesting to keep the 10-year vesting.
Was there still confusion that it was 6?
There was confusion in 2019.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I think P&Z said 10, and then I thought it was dialed back. And I'm not concerned either way. I'm not harping on it. And Sarah, I saw your hand up. Either way. I'm not going to hold up the meeting on it, whether it's 6 or 10. And if it's 10, we can move forward. But I know we discussed this in 2019.
The BOCC resolution is 10 years.
With Greg's signature, it was 6, I thought.
Jeffrey, could I clear it up? So when we went through the conceptual review, it was 6. But then when we came back for detailed review, they agreed to extend it to 10. So there's probably whatever the resolution was, the earlier resolution for conceptual with Greg's signature was 6, and then it got changed to 10.
That's all I need. Thank you. And any other commissioner questions or comments for staff or the applicant? I guess for Glenn or for Leslie, do you want to touch? You touched quite a bit on the barn relative to open. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, Cliff, you had a hand up.
No, you can go ahead. You started.
After you, sir.
Okay. I've heard no mention of what's to happen with the TDRs that were part of the 2019 application.
So as Glenn talked about, if you're thinking the 5750 that was part of the Castle Creek parcel, is being transferred to the Mesa parcel. That is not changing in this application. And then the 7,500 that the BOCC and maybe the P&Z, I forget that, that is also being transferred to the Mesa parcel as a benefit granted for the historic designation. That is not changing. However, because of linking the bunkhouse to the lodge, and there's that link structure, and then there's a garage proposed with that, and there's also subgrade space being added to the lodge, part of the renovation. The applicant is transferring back 784 square feet from the Mesa parcel back to the ranch parcel. And attachment C, attachment E in your packet is a spreadsheet of how those square footages are landing on the ranch parcel and the Mesa parcel with this current proposed development. Jeffrey,
That was my only question, if you were waiting for me to respond.
Okay.
No, everyone's got their glasses for this meeting. Suzanne Caskey. Suzanne,
There. Before this meeting, after just reading the packet, my major concern was what the Open Space and Trails had said about this application. Because I think Open Space and Trails, they know what they're doing. They do a great job of it. I have changed my mind about that concern because I think it seems that the reason for the proposed trail was to be able to view the property and therefore, or learn about the history. And I think that you have cured that concern by talking about not only a QR code, if that's possible, but placing the other sign where you're placing it. Everything else I am very comfortable with. And the gift of the film, the gift of just doing the film is big enough, but then giving it to the Historical Society is great. I had no idea, none, about the history and the intricate history of that site. So I've learned a lot just in your presentation, and Glenn, you and your team, I think, are doing a great job. And Meredith, you presented things quite well.
So I didn't hear a question. Glenn, one for you with respect to open space. Was the 10-foot wide Conundrum Trail easement part of the original application in 2019? Refresh my aging memory.
The 10-foot wide Conundrum Creek Trail easement was not part of the original application. It was a request from Open Space and Trails that we dedicate that easement. I'm not sure how much it would ever be used, but the basis for that request was years ago in 1979, the Coffey family did a lot split where they split off a 10-acre parcel down on Conundrum Creek Road from the property. And as part of that 1979 approval, the county requested and the Coffey family granted a 10-foot wide trail easement that ran along Conundrum Creek Road. So Open Space and Trails thought that it would be a good idea to link that original trail easement that was granted by the Coffey family along Conundrum Creek Road to an extension of that that would be contiguous with the Mesa lot. And the Coffeys had no objection to it and agreed to that, as Meredith and Sami agree to now, to grant that trail easement. I'm not sure if it'll ever be used. A lot of times people that are going up the Conundrum Creek Trail, when it's very busy, they may park on Castle Creek Road, but most of them walk down the dirt road to the trailhead. And I'm not sure the easement would ever be used, but it's possible. And one thing I would mention is there's a lot less traffic and parking on Castle Creek Road than there used to be before they went to a permit system for backpacking at the Conundrum Hot Springs. And what we've noticed is since they put that permit system in place, there are very few people that are parking on Castle Creek Road the way they used to. So the possibility of needing that trail easement has diminished somewhat because of the new management practices for Conundrum Creek.
And just as one follow-up, have we received any response from the caucus? And for both Glenn and Leslie?
No. Now, your meeting, I mean, the caucus was referred
Right.
as part of our standard referral, but the public hearing that will be noticed is at the BOCC level.
Okay. And anything in, I think it was Susanna Reed's letter to be concerned with from a historic preservation standpoint? We spent a lot of time with open space and trails, either Glenn or Leslie.
Well, her referral letter is in your packet. And as she says in her letter, she's been working with Meredith a lot on the renovation of the lodge, and also coming up with, in Susanna's words, a compromise on how to plan the preservation of the bunkhouse in relation to the lodge in a way that preserves the historic integrity of both structures. And that's where they've come up with moving the bunkhouse and linking it to the lodge. And Susanna Reed supports that. And Susanna Reed has also been really involved with Meredith, as Meredith has started the significant renovation of the lodge, so they can move into it soon.
Excellent. Chelsea, thank you, Leslie. Chelsea?
Yeah, thanks. I was trying my best to follow the pictures that were on the screen, but Glenn, can you show us again the proposed distance from the relocation of the barn? Just so it's hard to find it in the plethora of packet materials. So Glenn could just show us. Like where it is now and the distance.
Okay, here you go.
Yeah.
From this house right here that I have my hand on, that's the new house that could someday be built on the ranch parcel. To the barn here is 1,100 feet.
Gotcha. And that's where you're proposing to put it that. Okay. I noticed that they're moving the caretaker dwelling unit into the barn. And so what's the plan for like the caretaker or whoever's living there? Are they going to be interacting with the house and traveling up and down Castle Creek Road to caretake, or what's the program there?
Here's the program. This is the old ranch road here.
Okay.
And right now it's wide enough. It's probably like about 10 to 12 feet wide. This is going to become just a 2-track for a 4-wheeler. So if the caretaker is going to live in the wood barn here on the left side, if the caretaker needs to go up to the Highland Bavarian Lodge or the new house, they can take this 2-track. Likewise, we envision that the Loring, Incan, and family could take the 2-track down here. And this road will pretty much be restored. We're also going to restore this road here because there's going to be a new entry here. So there'll be less roads on the property.
Okay. I guess 2 tracks don't sound like travelable in the winter. Is it going to be a winter road also plowed in the snowy season, ice and snow, or what?
I don't know. We could ask Meredith about that. What do you envision? Will it be snowmobiles, or what do you think will happen in the winter?
We plowed it this year and I've been riding the horses back there. And I think, as long as we don't have like a tremendous amount of snow, that we would keep doing that because it's the only place for us to ride. So you can drive on that right now.
Okay.
But I think for the most part, our caretaker is more of a ranch manager. Like his primary job is like helping us with the animals and the agricultural side. So I think most of his work will be at that side of the property. He'll be doing snow plowing for us also. So he'll have to travel on the main road to do the snow plowing. But most of his work will be on that end of the property.
And you've already got the guy selected, and
he already is living up there. Yeah.
That's nice. All right. Thank you for your feedback. Just wanted to look at it again and understand the dynamic of how it all interplays with each other. Thank you.
Jeffrey, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Oh, that was really exciting. Cliff, your final question or comment, and then any final closing remarks from Glenn or Leslie, given it's almost 6:30 and Meredith's daughter wants dinner. And I realize there's a continuance to February 15th, which would include, I think the presentation from Susanna Reed is actually ironically the same night. So Cliff's question, and then any wrap up from Glenn or Leslie before we would motion for a continuance.
This is for staff, the 1,000 square foot CDU on the Mesa property, additional house. What's the justification for a CDU up there? I understand the ranch.
Yep. Cliff, the CDU is the ranch manager's unit in the barn.
There's 2 different CDUs on this list. Primary house on Mesa lot gets a CDU for 1,000 square feet. Detached.
The Mesa parcel, Leslie, not the ranch parcel.
Oh, the Mesa, yeah. So the Mesa parcel went through activity envelope and site plan review, and the CDU was approved. So yes, up to 1,000 square feet for a CDU on the Mesa. And then there's additional square footage for a storage shed.
And I think, Cliff, in terms of justification, I mean, the code allows for a CDU as an accessory dwelling unit to a single family residence. It's not required to, to tend the ranch or something like that. That's something that the code allows, subject to special review, which was granted during that prior review.
By by council, not council, sorry, never mind. Board of County Commissioners, they approved it.
Correct.
Got it.
So I guess, again, at this point, Meredith or Leslie or Suzanne, closing remarks. Again, we're continuing to February 15th. So the only motion we would have this evening would be a motion for a continuance. There's no resolution, obviously, in our package at this point. So any,
can I make one other comment, Jeffrey?
Please.
Yeah, I do think a site visit would be really helpful. Just to understand the difference in the trails and the comments and just see how it all is situated now. Just sooner versus later, if we're going to do it as a group and it be a field trip, I might be out of town soon. So please schedule it in the near term and I'll go along with the group.
So you all would be open to me throwing out some dates and times, and you get back to me and we'll schedule that site visit. Okay.
And
Versus trying to schedule it right now during the meeting.
And again, I'd push for a caucus comment, given they're closer in many respects to the nuances of the sites relative to open space and trails. And I respect open space and trails feedback, but it'd be really nice on the 15th if we could have that additional referral letter from the neighbors, given there's questions about locations. And I understand and I appreciate Glenn's point and his demonstration of the distance between ag operations, if you will, and living space. So I'm cognizant of that, but it'd be nice to get sort of, again, just a view from the caucus as well. So, Glenn, any final, or Meredith, any final thoughts? And thank you both for your time, and thank you for the home videos. That was lovely. Anytime you could have Friedel Pfeiffer attend a P&Z meeting, it's cool.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree. It was an excellent presentation. I especially liked the side-by-side compare chart and the video. Very nice. My mom enjoyed it too. She watched with me.
Thank you. Motion to continue the Namu Ranch. Again, both Sammy and Meredith and your daughter, thank you so much for your time this evening, Glenn, and your team. Thank you to everyone. I need a motion at this point to continue the Namu Ranch LLC. And sorry, I'm all the way down. Attachment F.
So moved.
The Namu Ranch LLC major amendment to detailed submission and final plat activity envelope and site plan review, special review, caretaker dwelling unit to February 15th. It sounds like I have a motion from Chelsea, and I need a second.
Second.
It sounds like a second from Jasmine, and I will just, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
We will see you on February 15th. Again, thank you for that wonderful presentation and documentary. Next up is Mr. Barron.
Good
I
evening.
assume Mr. Richmond.
Mr. Richmond has just joined the fray.
Wonderful. And Tammy
Yep.
Coach, thank you so much. It's been a long time. It's wonderful to see you. Tom Barron, apologies that you're probably someplace warm and joining us from there. So the next item is a public agenda item. This is a public hearing. It is the Grand Gulch LLC GMQS competition for new development rights in rural and remote Colorado. And I'm assuming live from 585 Pearl Street is Tom Barron, and live from Bohan Gulch is Alan Richmond. And Tammy, the floor is all yours.
All
right. Yeah. All right. So as you just said, the applicant for this item is Grand Gulch LLC, and you just introduced the members representing the LLC. Tom Barron being the owner, Alan Richmond, the planner, and Dave Myler is also on as their attorney. So let me share my screen here. Okay. You guys see a map on the screen? Hopefully.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So the subject parcel is located here in blue. It's approximately 2.7 miles up Little Annie Road from the intersection of Little Annie Road and Castle Creek Road. It contains approximately 3 acres and is within the rural and remote zone district. So I'm just going to give you guys actually a quick background on the application and the general code standards, and then I'm going to pause and kind of let the P&Z decide how they want to hear the process next in terms of if we let Alan present or if we want to jump right into scoring. So just going to do a quick background and hopefully make it pretty brief. I'm assuming you guys read the packets. So the next slide here is a picture of the subject property. It's in this top photo, it's basically the property runs up the hillside with these aspen trees over here on the left, pretty much on the western border of the property. The photo itself was taken just off of Little Annie Road on the shared driveway access to an existing cabin on a parcel just south of the subject property. The bottom photo is taken from the neighboring property just to the south, and it shows a long-time existing cabin. And then the red rectangles on each of those photos is where a proposed 500 square foot cabin is to be located. So the request for this application is pretty straightforward in that it's just a growth management allotment for a new development right in order to construct a 500 square foot cabin. It's the background and prior ownership of the parcel and the applicant's ultimate stated intent to make this application a little bit more unique. Here's just another quick photo looking from the subject property down south at that neighboring cabin. All right, so shown on screen here, the subject property is this rectangular-ish area labeled number 1 in yellow. It was originally a portion of the unpatented BBB B load. It was owned by the Forest Service up until 2012 when the current owner purchased the property through the Small Tract Act known as STA. So this parcel is known as STA 1168. So through this same Small Tract Act, the owner also purchased these other parcels highlighted in yellow and labeled number 2 through 5. Access to the property is proposed to be taken obviously from Little Annie Road, and then from there, you can see Little Annie Road here. They'll use this existing driveway, which also then branches onto the parcel just to the south, and use that shared driveway and also a shared parking area to then access the site via pedestrian path to their proposed location for that cabin. So the owner of the subject property is also the owner of this property just to the south with that existing cabin. They also own the parcel to the south of that. So they were able to grant that access easement and an easement for the parking area and pedestrian path. So as I just mentioned, the request is fairly simple for the GMQS allotments to create that development right. However, the applicant has disclosed that despite what is proposed in the application, they have no intent to actually develop the parcel or construct the cabin. So instead, their stated intent is to obtain a development right to then pursue the TDR system to execute a restrictive covenant, which would sever the development right from the parcel in exchange for a TDR. And this would thereby prohibit development on the property in perpetuity. So pursuant to section 670.20, parcels within this rural and remote zone district may administratively sever a development right from a parcel in exchange for a TDR. This parcel is unique, however, because it was previously owned by the Forest Service. And this distinction is important pursuant to section 630.100, which states that lands owned or controlled by a government entity on or before June 12, 1978 do not qualify for a GMQS exemption and do not contain a development right. And so it is for this reason that the applicant is requesting a development right through the GMQS competition system. So I just want to be really clear that the application at hand is solely for a GMQS allotment for a new development right. And so staff has reviewed the application solely for compliance with those standards. I guess I should also mention that also proposed with that 500 square foot cabin is a improved access. So they had proposed to widen and improve the driveway. Also with that, they're proposing a more formalized parking area, which is 30 by 30, and a hammerhead turnaround area for emergency vehicles. They've also proposed within that parking area a buried 10,000 gallon water tank for fire suppression purposes. So this conceptual site plan shown on screen basically shows everything that they're proposing to do. This application was referred to the attorney, the Forest Service, zoning, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Little Annie HOA, Open Space and Trails, the Fire Department, Public Works, and the Castle Creek Caucus. We did receive comments from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, zoning, and I spoke with the Fire Department on the phone. Additionally, we did receive a forwarded email from Marcella Larson just this past week. So we forwarded that on to the commissioners, and hopefully you guys all saw that and reviewed that. If not, I can provide that to you tonight. So just jumping into the code, the general standards for the GMQS applications include the requirement that the application is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as well as that the development be able to comply with the development standards of the land use code. Kind of obvious. So the fundamental goal within the comprehensive plan is the goal to sustain the county's rural character. Also, the master plan in effect in this area is the 2003 Maroon Castle Creek Master Plan. And that plan, although it doesn't have any very specific objectives, there's some general objectives that do apply to this application. And those include the objective that all future residential development in the valley should be complementary to the rural character, and that the natural environment should dominate a person's experience. There's also the objective that a residential development should be defined by extremely low density, single family residential housing of moderate size and bulk. Their objective is to protect open space, wildlife habitat, preserve recreational opportunities, and that the scenic character of the natural environment should dominate someone's experience. So staff considers the proposed development of a 500 square foot cabin to be consistent with those objectives, as well as the intent of the rural and remote zone district. It's the 500 square foot cabin is half the size of the maximum size allowed in the zone district. And as you can see, it will be clustered closely with the other existing cabin. They're also proposing, like I said, to share that driveway and use a pedestrian path from the existing driveway, thereby, reducing the need to develop a new driveway altogether. So staff believes that these design decisions really do help to consolidate development, which does help to sustain that rural character. Also, like I just mentioned, the size of the cabin is considered to be of a moderate size and bulk, which in turn also helps to achieve the scenic and wildlife objectives. And I'll just mention that it's also very consistent with neighboring parcels in the area and the small cabins that we see along that side of Little Annie. So another prerequisite to award development, a development allotment, is that the proposed development must comply with all the requirements of Pickens County Code. So in this case, the applicant has requested the typical activity envelope or site plan review, but has appropriately included responses to those standards in Chapter 7 of the Land Use Code. And you guys are all familiar with those, and those include standards like avoiding steep slopes, floodplains, geologic hazards, wildlife hazards, or wildfire hazards, riparian areas, and significant wildlife areas. So outlined in my memo, we basically walked through those, and it was found that the application does avoid these areas and meets the associated criteria. So jumping into the allotment and scoring portion, so every year we hold this competition, and in this rural area there is an annual ceiling of 17,250 square feet of floor area in the rural area for new allotments for parcels each year. So as I said, the applicant's requesting 500 square feet, and there were no other competing applications that were submitted. Therefore, there's no competition for that 17,250 square feet of floor area. Staff scoring was provided in the packet in attachment A, and we recommended a score of 24 points. This does exceed the minimum required for an allotment. And the commissioners have the option to either accept staff scoring, or you may individually score the commitments. And then each of your individual scores will be averaged for a final score. So at this point, I'm just going to pause and want to see if you guys have any questions up to this point, and then let you guys decide on whether in the past we can walk through each of those scoring categories and how staff scored it. In the past, the P&Z was okay and had read through staff scoring and understood the categories, but I'm happy to walk through it. We can also turn it over to Alan if he wants to do a little bit more background and touch on the applicant's more personal background on these parcels. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeffrey to turn it over to the commissioners to see where you guys want to go with the presentation from here.
Cliff, do you want to table your comment for Alan's presentation and we'll come back, or this is critical and we must answer it this minute?
No, it's not critical. You can go to Alan.
Okay. Tammy, just what's 20 times 30?
600.
100.
Okay. Alan, fix your map.
Well, yeah, I mean, potentially he could have a, I guess
We're
it could be
awarding him
exact.
based on a 500 square foot cabin.
Right.
Alan, the presentation's yours.
The cabin would be somewhere within that 30 by 20 area. We were trying to identify the location in general. But yeah, the cabin is much smaller than that. Would you like me to go through my remarks, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I think where we're going to end up this evening is given. I would love to hear your remarks, and again, I think the major question is going to be what's going to prevent development. So I understand that you're going through a convoluted process in order to receive square footage on a site that's that is not eligible through its normal means to receive square footage. The question, the concern for this board should obviously be that no development should take place. We should make an award and sterilize the site. So that's the background. But
Yeah, that's unquestionably our objective here, and it's really what I wanted to focus my remarks on. I think Tammy's giving you kind of the specifics in a great deal of depth, and I kind of wanted to step back and help you to understand the owner's motivation. So as Tammy mentioned, the owner, Tom Barron, who is on the call with us tonight, acquired the subject property in 2015 from the Forest Service. And he acquired the property and the adjacent parcels that are on that broader map that Tammy was showing, because Tom has owned land and a small cabin in the Little Annie Basin since 1985. He owns the Claremont property, which is earlier on Little Annie Road than what we're looking at here. He's a long-term proponent of the rural and remote zoning in the area, and he actively supports the county's desire to limit the future development of the basin. When Tom acquired these properties back in 2015, it was his understanding that they had the potential to become developable. He felt that conserving them as open space would be more in keeping with the county's rural and remote zone than if they were ever to be developed if they fell into other hands. He was also really concerned, if you look at parcel 3 there, which Tammy has mentioned, that's the parcel that Jordan Greengrass's cabin is located on. Jordan has lived on that property for the last 50 years in that cabin that you saw in the photos that I took. Jordan always thought that his property was located, that his cabin was located on private property. But when Tom started looking into these properties, it turned out that Jordan's cabin was actually on Forest Service land, which came as a surprise to everyone. Jordan has been a great neighbor in that area, and he's been a long-time steward of that area. And Tom wanted to make sure that Jordan could live there just as long as he wanted to. 50 years has not been long enough for Jordan. So Tom's stated objective at the time he acquired those parcels from the Forest Service was to preserve them as open space and wildlife habitat and prevent them from being further developed. That's consistent with the way Tom has been operating in the basin for the last several decades. We probably should have provided you a map showing you all of the various mining claims that Tom has purchased through various LLCs in the last number of years, but he hasn't developed any of those parcels. He's not a developer. He's acquired them, he's kept them as open space, and more recently, we've started the process of taking some of those mining claims and requesting TDRs from them and sterilizing them through the TDR program in perpetuity. Just as further evidence of kind of the history of Tom in this area, in 2020, Tom had purchased 2 mining claims, the Corame mining claims that are about just past the Little Annie turnoff, about 7.5 miles up Castle Creek Road. There are 2 mining claims. I actually worked on them for the bank, which owned the property. We were able to get a development right for a large house on that property. Tom bought those 2 mining claims and he resold them to the county open space for open space purposes. In 2019, Tom gave a property to Aspen Center for Environmental Studies, ACES, along Upper Castle Creek, and that's going to be used for outdoor education by ACES. The only development that I could identify for Tom during this time is the historic restoration of the cabin, the Little Annie Mine cabin, which is about a 500 square foot cabin just below where Jordan's cabin is, where Tom has a long-term resident living there, a community member living there. So just to tell you how this all came about after the purchase, in 2020, October of 2020, Dave met with the Community Development Department. He thought he was starting the process of getting a TDR issued for this property. Tammy's kind of taken you through the legalese. It's not entitled to a TDR at this point in time until it has a development right. That's why we're here. We're here asking for a development right so that we can sterilize the property. So our approach basically to this has been twofold. Number one, we wanted to prepare an application for a development that would cause the least possible impact to the Little Annie Basin and would score above the minimum threshold. And then secondly, we wanted to make it expressly clear in this application that Tom has no intention whatsoever of developing the proposed cabin. We've said it on the record everywhere. I'm saying it on the record again tonight. As soon as this development right is awarded, Tom's direction to me is to apply for a TDR and permanently conserve this property, as well as the 3 other STAs that you see here, numbers 2, 4, and 5, which are all committed to open space as part of this development application. And Tom has also committed in this development application, and I think he's going to tell you tonight, that he intends to use the proceeds from the sale of this TDR to continue his land conservation efforts in the Little Annie Basin. So if you wonder why is he doing this as opposed to just putting a conservation easement on the property, it's because the TDR mechanism provides the means to create additional resources to do even more conservation in this area. That's what we're about here. We've reviewed the staff's proposed scoring of the application. We are 100% comfortable with that scoring. We hope that you'll accept it as recommended by staff in the resolution. If you're comfortable with the scoring, I really don't need to get into any further comments about our development proposal, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. One final thing I wanted to mention to you is that email that you got from Marcella Larson. She had sent it back to us back in November, and we had assumed that it also went to the caucus, and the caucus was supposed to forward it to you for your packet. It never got into your packet because the caucus neglected to forward it. So I'm just going to read the 4 sentences in that message to you from Marcella Larson, a former member of the county P&Z. Thanks to Tom and his family for being long-term stewards of the land on the backside of Aspen Mountain. This is an example of how all landowners in the rural and remote zone should act. Larson Family LP will fully support this application. What an amazing contribution to both continuing an existing longtime locals home and also sterilizing it from future development. I think all of you know that compliments about land use applications don't come easily from Marcella. And so we're real pleased about those comments. That's all I have to say. Tom, I don't know if you want to add anything at this point.
Tom, or should I call you Prince Alice?
I've been called worse things than that. I think, Alan, you have summed it up perfectly, and Tammy, you did an excellent job walking through the process. I would just add, honestly, for those of you who don't know me, this has been part of my overall strategy that I've been pursuing for a long time now, over 35 years, to conserve as much as possible of the upper Castle Creek Valley, frankly. And I honestly, I'm happy to get that kind of applause from Marcella and other people, especially my neighbors up there. But honestly, I don't see it as anything special. I just think of it as just being a good steward of this wonderful landscape that my family is lucky enough to be able to take care of for our time. And honestly, I just feel grateful every single day that I'm up there. And that's all it's about. So all the rest is just good stewardship. As Alan said, whatever available resources I have, I continue plowing into implementing the conservation strategy for not just the basin, but the upper Castle Creek Valley. And that's what we're going to continue. Happy to answer any questions, but that's really all I have to add.
Thank you. I appreciate you joining us, and thank you for everything you're doing in the Valley. I'm going to turn it back to commissioners for questions for either Tom, Alan, or Tammy. And this is a public hearing, so I also need to open it up to public, but if there are any commissioner comments prior to public, that would be wonderful. And Cliff, I think you had a hand up earlier.
Okay, there are 5 lots in this diagram. I realize that the development allotment is for number 1. And I understand now the significance of number 3. Thank you, Alan. That was helpful. 2, 4, and 5. Are they on this map for a reason? Are they linked to this extinguishing of development rights?
Yes, Cliff, in order to get the points in the open space category, we have committed to including them in the covenant restricting all development on those properties. So all three of those are being extinguished as well.
Okay.
That's part of your growth management application. It'll be in the covenant that we must impose on the property to get the growth management allotments. So those are unquestioned open space properties.
Okay. I have to admit, when I first read this packet, I was skeptical. But Tom, after hearing you, you're my hero. Thank you for all that you're doing.
And as I mentioned before, we can go through all the criteria. I just, in the past, the P&Z has opted not to. So that is an option to go through each of the criteria and what the applicant is committing to at this point.
I will speak on behalf of P&Z, but someone can correct me that we do not, we will accept staff score. We appreciate Alan's attempt at a bonus, but given what's in the resolution, and unless someone shakes their head otherwise, this evening we would accept staff score, but Alan, you're not getting a bonus.
That's cool.
If that's okay with P&Z, though, I can't make that decision without P&Z's approval.
This Cliff and I approve.
It's fine with me too, to accept their score. I guess my only question, if I can ask it now.
Please.
I don't want this to sound negative because I don't think it's a negative idea. I think it's an overall clever idea, but how does everyone feel about like the tail kind of wagging the dog here to arrive at a TDR through the GMQS system? I'm sort of neutral on it because I think the end result, the means justify the ends, sort of. But any other thoughts on that from the commissioners or staff?
Sorry, Susan.
I can go ahead and say that it absolutely has given us a lot of heartburn, to put it gently. We do have a lot of issues with it, and we're looking at exactly why we have issue with it is right. This wasn't, it is, like you said, the tail wagging the dog.
Sure, I'm not trying to be negative about it. I just I'm curious what everybody thinks about this clever.
May I attempt to give you an answer, Chelsea?
Of course.
I don't know if I'm still on, but
you are, Tom. It's yours.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. I just wanted to illuminate you that I didn't intend to go through the growth management process ever. I simply bought these parcels between 2012 and 2015 because I was informed from what I thought was a credible source that they had developable potential, and I wanted to extinguish those rights. I didn't want another essentially subdivision of small cabins happening up there along the road, and I, thinking like, that the stewardship point, that's where the elk come across, and where their primary grazing area is when they have the young ones. So I felt like that needed to be extinguished. And then we found out subsequently that, in fact, I couldn't get a TDR until I got the development right, and the development right requires this process. And so that's, Chelsea, I hope that explains the tail wagging the dog process. It was never intended to be that way. I really just honestly was trying to take those parcels off the development market.
Thank you, Tom. Chelsea, do you have a follow-up?
Got it. No, I guess anything else from staff about how the GMQS system's being used here or applied?
Chelsea, I can jump in a little bit. Like Tammy said, I think, we definitely had concerns about, the potential for these small tracks coming out of the forest. Here's 4 of them in front of us. How many more of these are there? you know, concerns, you know, right, if maybe Tom's intent was not speculative, but somebody else's clearly will be. You know, I mean, it's not simple to go through growth management, but again, you know, was this intent? Is it consistent with rural remote? Obviously, protecting them is great. But if we were to look at somebody pursuing growth management on this, you know, should we require that it be 35 acres, which is the minimum in rural remote? You know, so we've had a lot of, you know, discussion about this, you know, recognizing that I think that, right, this is a pathway that is provided in the code today. I think the question is that something we would want to, you know, continue in the future? And, you know, what would that look like to change that? So again, I think have been some of our thoughts and concerns about it.
Yeah, and that's quite a precedent.
You know, we understand everyone's concerns, and Suzanne's use of the term pathway, I think, is an interesting one, because frankly, I looked for every other way to get to this place. I looked at the constrained lot scenario, which is not authorized in the rural and remote zone district, so we couldn't go that way. Growth management right now is literally the only way to obtain a development right, and that's why we're utilizing it. Had there been any other option available to us, we wouldn't. And we understand that staff is looking at ways to deal with this issue, and you know, we hope that you recognize the positive end that's being achieved here and can still support this.
Suzanne Kaskin, and then I think Jasmine.
First, I must say the application is splendid, and it's the best way, because Tom, I trust you. Anything you say, I trust, because I know of your reputation. I know of the protections that you've provided for us before. I understand Chelsea's concerns, and that just means that we better get busy looking at the way we use TDRs and the way we use GMQS. But I've never seen the TDR used better, ever. So thank you so much for this, Tom.
Thank you.
And Jeffrey, I agree that we should agree with the planning staff on the scoring.
And if I need to read the code language from 64020 for everyone to be comfortable with it, I'm happy to read that as the background to understand why we're accepting it. And I guess for Tammy and Tom and Alan and Suzanne, you know, part of the conversation tonight is this body with most of the same constituents has also heard of landing cabins in rural and remote on lakes with OWTS, with, you know, with leach fields, with everything else. So I think I think you touch rural and remote and there's just trepidation, and it's aside from the applicant and the application that, you know, we've seen some scary stuff, you know, certainly around Lucian Lake. And I think that's, you know, we'll wear that for years. And it met code. And so, you know, I'm happy to describe that some other time, but I think Chelsea has a hand up, or it's your lamp. It just looks like a yellow hand behind you. Jasmine, did you have a question for Alan, Tom, or Tammy? So this is a public meeting. If we have any Pitkin County public calling in at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday before Groundhog Day to listen to GMQS awards, we are here for you.
Jeffrey, there is no attendees online.
Jeffrey, I have a question really quick.
Please.
Yeah, so yeah, when I first saw this application, I kind of thought the same thing as Chelsea. I had a not a great reaction, and then it took a while of reading the whole thing a couple times and then seeing that Alan really had that this was the only pathway to get this done. I have two questions really quick for Alan, and then a question for staff. Alan, this lot, it's not patented or unpatented because it's not a mining claim, right? Is that correct?
That's right. It was Forest Service land.
Okay.
It was part of a, Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was part of an unpatented.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what.
So I know the process, if you own a patented mining claim, the process to make it patented so that you can legally build on it is extremely excruciating and takes a very long time and is rarely done. So how does the sale of the land through the Forest Service sort of mitigate that process? Does that make sense?
You have me at a loss.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
Because if it was part of an unpatented mining claim before, and then now it got sold and now it's patented, or it's not, it doesn't have to be because it's not a mining.
No,
it's not a, yeah, go ahead. It's not a mining claim and it's not patented. It just went to the Forest Service.
The Forest Service basically deeded the land in this configuration through the Small Tracts Act, which it has authority as the federal government to do. So, it can create parcels of land outside of the county's subdivision process, but the county process overcomes that by saying, okay, you have a parcel of land, but because it was created after growth management, it does not have a development right. So it came with nothing attached to it. That's why we're in front of you asking for a new development right.
Yeah.
Because right now this property has nothing, but it has all the capability. It's not physically constrained as Tammy walked you through. It's got an area that's flat. It's not critical habitat. It's low wildfire. So it's physically capable of being developed. And if it got in the hands of a development person, they would be coming in with an application for 1,000 square foot cabin there. It physically can be done.
So Alan, obviously I understand the intention is to not develop this property and that you had to go through this process in order to get the TDR. Then why not make the application for the cabin be like 10 square feet or 100 square feet? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we tried to put together what I thought was the least impact application possible, but yet something that would pass the straight face test.
Right.
I think a 10-foot square cabin, number one, it doesn't meet building code minimum requirements for habitation, which I think are in the 200 to 300 square foot range. And in this case, we're putting 150 square feet of the 500 below grade because that's what the code kind of directs you to do in the growth management scoring. So from my standpoint, we were trying to put something together that you would not look at as something that would be a problem, but at the same time would be something that was legitimate. I don't think a 100 square foot cabin is really a legitimate request, even though it would score, perfectly well.
Okay. Yeah,
But
you understand,
regardless,
the intent behind it, right? If you intend never to build it, then by making it as small as possible, you sort of show in the application that you're really putting your money where your mouth is.
That's why we went to half of 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we were getting there with half of 1,000, and frankly, I mean, Tom and I are getting all these kudos for our reputation and believability, and we're putting all this in front of you on the record. If we don't follow through, our reputations are shot here. So
no, I understand that.
We're being as clear as we can be about what's happening here.
I have a question for staff. What are you guys working on to fix this? And it's not a loophole, but in the future, do we have a plan to sort of keep this from happening again, where somebody's forced to use the GMQS system to get an application for a building permit that they don't intend to use, to then get a TDR, because obviously these guys are good actors, and I'm just trying to, the next group that comes down the pipe, that, with the price of TDRs right now, might not have the best intentions like these applicants.
So like I said, we definitely have had conversations and started to throw out some ideas. I don't think we're ready to say that we think this is the solution. But, like I said, I mean, a huge concern here is the size of these parcels, and that they're totally non-conforming in size in the rural remote zone district. These are parcels that have no development right associated with them because they're coming out of public lands. So again, I think there's a lot to consider in there about the appropriateness of, these parcels being eligible to even compete for a development right and or be eligible for a TDR. But again, like I said, we'd have to change the code. I don't, know exactly what that would look like, but I think, we've said the same thing, this meets the code, but we want to look at it sooner rather than later to think about, what does it look like if somebody else shows up? Because somebody else could come in and, it could be a very different scenario. So, I don't have the solution for you just yet.
That's all right. Thank you.
Hey, Jeffrey, it's Monty. I had a question too.
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Monty, you're on.
Okay. Hey, just one thing I wasn't quite clear about. So for extinguishing all 5 of these, it just, they have the ability to get one TDR?
Correct.
Correct?
Right. So the application is
are being extinguished in the growth management process, and 1 is the only one that'll have the development right associated with it. So 2, 4, and 5 will get extinguished by the growth management covenant, and not by the TDR process.
Right, but all these being extinguished just produces one TDR for
One
that.
TDR.
Okay, and then you'll sell that, and then Tom will buy more and try to extinguish. Was kind of what I understood his plan was.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I had.
So I see you're unmuted. Thanks for joining us. Any further questions? Ryan, do you have anything to add in terms of process or this application? Sorry.
No, I was just going to jump in, but I think Suzanne adequately answered Zach's question, which I think was a really good one, or concern. I think if this had been a less benign application, there could have been a question about whether these parcels were even parcels that were even eligible to compete in GMQS, but there's enough ambiguity in the code at this point that I think proceeding with the application as it's been presented makes sense. And if we need to clean something up in the future, staff is certainly evaluating those options. So that's all I had.
Thank you. Any further questions? Monty, you still have your hand up, but I assume it's from a minute ago. I'm going to read Sorry, Monty. You good?
Yes, I'm good.
I'm going to read 64020 for the record, which is general standards for allotments and competition. And it basically just reads, when scoring an application, the Planning and Zoning Commission should consider whether each commitment made by the applicant seeking points is proportional to size of the allotment being requested. In other words, an applicant seeking an allotment for a large amount of floor area would be expected to make proportionally greater commitment to obtain the same score on an applicant seeking a lesser amount of floor area. So again, it's sort of codifying that we accept staff scoring. If there's no further questions for staff or for Tom and Alan, at this point, I would, at 7:17, I appreciate everyone's time and patience. entertain a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Pitkin County, Colorado, granting an allocation in the 2021 rural area residential growth management quota system allotment for a new development right to Grand Gulch LLC. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Zach, any further commissioner comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to make one more comment just on what Rye said. If this, and this isn't just not about this specific application, but for future, our never-ending list of things that we want to fix in the GMQS system as we go forward, such as, you know, giving a fishing easement, allocating points for a fishing easement on a river that no one ever fishes on, you know, allocating points to extinguish development on a lot that is, you know, very, very small, very constrained. Half of it is in, you know, we look at like lot 4, lot 5 on a lot that might never pass muster for development. It's something to look at down the road.
I agree.
I have a first, I have a second. Any other comments or questions for the applicant or for staff? Further commissioner comments with regards to the resolution on the table?
Shall we vote?
Oh, cool. Everyone's back. Further questions or comments, even for David Mylar for hanging out for 2.5 hours. David, thanks for joining us. Jasmine, I saw you. Did you have anything? Sorry, David.
No worries. I have nothing to add.
We appreciate you joining us.
My pleasure.
Jasmine, did you have any questions for or any further? At this point,
No.
Jasmine?
No. Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard you no. Thank you. I, again, would like to thank everyone, the applicant, for going through our land use code so effectively, and for staff for working through this application. So thank you all. At this point, I will take a roll call vote since I can see you all on Match Game. Zach Matthews.
Aye.
Monty Thompson.
Aye.
Cliff Weiss.
Aye.
Suzanne Caskey.
Aye.
Chelsea Clark.
Aye.
Jasmine Tiger.
Aye.
And Jeffrey Woodruff is an aye. Congratulations. You are the recipients of a growth management quota system award in the rural and residential zone district of 500 square feet. And I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I really do appreciate you going through the process and the application. And I think everyone in this board would appreciate your being a steward in the Valley. So I think that's really the heart of where our questions are. And sorry if it's a process, but thanks for protecting rural and remote.
We understand the concerns, and something tells me you'll be seeing a code amendment sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and may I just add to that, Jeffrey, honestly, thank all of you, seriously, just as one of your citizens. I'm so grateful that the P&Z and the staff take so seriously every possible threat to the wonderful area we're lucky enough to live in. And so thank you for protecting those values.
We live in a beautiful place. So it's again, we appreciate your application and your time.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you guys go, and then I'm going to see if I can dismiss our 9th member in the last couple of minutes.
Good night, all. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom and Alan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Before we adjourn, we did briefly discuss an attendance policy, and I realize it's 7:17, and we knew this would be a long meeting. we have one attendee who is, one board member who's attended 1 out of 9 meetings while he's been on planning and zoning. And so the question for the board is really, we then still have a 5-person quorum with an 8-person board. And it, as you know, it makes quorum and starting a meeting on time. And it's just, to me, it's a flagrant violation of everyone's time. And, I'd be interested in your views. If you don't want me to pursue this and let it go, that's fine. But I also, respect and value each of your time. So that's my soapbox.
Is there a reason for this gentleman's absence on a consistent basis? Has he had an opportunity to articulate why he's not attending?
I reached out to him prior to the BOCC meeting, thinking, if you're not going to show up to a BOCC meeting, that's probably pretty flagrant. And I did not hear back. So I do not have the gentleman's email, or sorry, I do have his email. I do not have his phone number, but did reach out accordingly. And, if you don't think it's appropriate and you don't want the chair to take an action, that's fine. But again, it costs us time and money when we struggle to get a quorum. And so he's not adding to quorum by not being here. I don't have an answer to your question in terms of his absence he joined the board in September and has been to 1 meeting. So it's 5 months. So overnight.
Have you guys heard from him?
Chelsea, no, we've had limited discussion. When he was first appointed, I think, there was, a little bit of back and forth. I knew at one point he was out of the country, had some issues joining. And then of late, I would say the last number of meetings you've had, we just, have had kind of radio silence from him. So not responding to, are you coming or not, or, anything along those lines. So I have not reached out to him of late.
Okay, I heard you. Did I hear you correctly? There is no attendance policy at this time, but we can, as a board, create an attendance policy and then assess whether all the members are in compliance with that policy.
Your bylaws do not currently include an attendance policy. They do speak to the ability for the chair to submit a request to the BOCC to remove a member for missing, I think what I said, Jeffrey, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, more than 1/3 of the meetings in a year. But there is no specific attendance policy stated in your bylaws.
Got it. Okay, well, I personally think, if you miss more than 1/3, then maybe somebody better suited could take your place. But in the absence of any reason for his or justification for him not being here, I guess you should give him a chance to say why he's not attending before we vote him off. It's my 10 cents.
Suzanne.
I agree with Chelsea. I do know that he's out of town, out of the country right now. And it's my understanding he's supposed to be back mid-February. So that means a little bit longer. I also have an email address for him. I don't know if I have a phone number, but if he's out of the country, that wouldn't help. I would like to, for him to receive a stern warning and for us to receive an explanation about why he isn't here, and maybe find out if he thinks it's okay to take this long away, because if he's going to continue to take, or any of us are going to take huge chunks of time away, then we shouldn't be on the board. I kind of said yes and no, didn't I? I understand, Jeffrey, that you can't give him a warning if you can't find him.
I reached out to him on January 20th. I copied Suzanne and said, I know he has his supporters on the BOCC, and I was anticipating that he would magically appear for the BOCC meeting. He did not. So that's where he gets his 1 for 9. He's attended one P&Z meeting since he's been appointed over the course of 5 months. And my view is it's just rude and discourteous to the rest of us who are here. And I want an absence at some meeting, but I'll give everyone warning and I'll say I'm not going to be attending. So I just feel like the last couple of months have been a struggle to get quorum and a struggle to start on time. And given the caliber and the what we have on both on the docket as well as the clients and lawyers, et cetera, on the other side, I respect starting at 5 p.m. every night that we have a meeting. If you guys don't want to operate that way and we could show up at 5:15, 5:30 or not at all, it's just not the way to run.
Well, I certainly agree with you on that. I think that it's hard to find an excuse to skip that many meetings when Zoom exists. I mean, I don't know where you go where you can't access it.
Hey, Jeffrey, it's Monty. Yeah, I think, again, if he really wanted to be on it, he would reach out even from outside the country, to let us know what's going on. The problem is it screws us up for quorum if we could miss a whole meeting because of that with other people who have legitimate reasons they can't. So to me, I think that, if he was really wanting to be on P&Z that much, he would at least reach out to us. And I think we just move forward and either eliminate that so we don't have to have 5 for a quorum and we can go back to 4, or we bring someone else on who's really wanting to be on P&Z and will show up and contribute. So that's just my thoughts on it.
I understand that, and I can go along with that.
Zach.
Yeah, no, I was just what Monty said. I remember when so anybody can correct me if I'm wrong. When the older board, before we added more numbers, then you need more people to make quorum. And it seemed like we used to have easier time making quorum when we had that different number. So I guess it kind of, when you have one person that doesn't show up ever, then you need more people to show up to make quorum. It throws the math off. So I guess my only thing is that to use Jeffrey's baseball reference is there any applications? Like, do we have anybody in the dugout that's ready to go? If we have people that are ready to do this, then and staff has applications, then we should pull them up and put them on deck.
So Suzanne, are you looking?
God bless you for humor. This is too long for me to not be funny. Please, somebody crack another joke.
So yeah, I can jump in. So right, Zach, when we only had 7 members on the P&Z, the quorum was 4. Once we jump to 8 or 9, the quorum is 5, whether we have 8 or 9. So right, you're right. The math is off. We're not currently advertising for P&Z members, so we don't have anybody in the dugout ready to go. It is that time of year where I think some of you, your terms may be coming up. And I at one point looked up who that was, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'll have to double check that. But usually at the time when we, ask people to re-up if they want or not, we do advertise for new members at that time. That's kind of, so that's on the horizon. I think usually terms expire on the 1st of April. So, we would be putting that out there pretty soon. Right now, technically you have a full P&Z with 9 members. You just have one who's not participating. So, right. I guess if we went to the board, had the chair say, hey, this person's not participating, has missed too many meetings, we'd like the board to remove him. At that point, the board would start to advertise for, an additional member.
We're getting in the weeds. It's 7:30. I'm starving. Let's wrap this up, please.
Suzanne.
So I guess, it sounds to me like everybody, would like to at least maybe have us reach out one more time to Yvonne and say, this is the concern that's been expressed. You've missed X number of meetings. We need to know if you intend to participate or not. And if not, we need to, to move on and ask the board to, re-advertise your position. So, I think that's a place to start. You have another meeting on the 15th of February. We can let you know what comes of that. I mean, again, I think at that point, if we have not even gotten a response from him, I think then we've answered that question and clearly would, want to go to the board and say, hey, this person, is not engaged. It's time to move on.
Yeah, I'll be happy to take action to vote for a recommendation to remove him at the next meeting if there's no response to a timely warning within the next week with a short fuse that he should respond within a week and be on deck for to get his batting average up.
Okay, got it.
Motion to adjourn?
Let's adjourn.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you
Bye,
all.
everybody. Thank you.
Okay, good night,
Thanks,
guys.
thanks, everybody.
Jeffrey,
Suzanne.
I know that we're disappearing and I'm about to leave the meeting too, but I'd like to hear sometime in the future about whether you all